Welcome to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Roads Crossing. I am Dr. Barry Schwenk. I'm a veterinarian, a pastor, and your host as we explore this intersection between faith and vocation. By any chance, is your life exactly the way that you planned it all out? Mine certainly is not. And that's one reason why I'm always interested with talking with other folks who have navigated similar life and professional transitions. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Dan Bieck, who is a faculty member at Lincoln Memorial University, and his 25-year journey through veterinary medicine as a teacher, an associate veterinarian, as a practice owner. It's had some significant highs and significant lows, everything from personal and professional success to facing doubt, compassion fatigue, and even burnout. That doesn't sound like anyone else that we know. It does it? Is it just me? I don't know. Well, I appreciate, Dan. I appreciate you joining me this morning because I think that you had mentioned that there's this, you have this idea that you embrace about life struggles and surprises helping us to become the person that God intends for us to be, and that's a huge issue. So I appreciate you joining us, and I'm assuming that has come from a lot of life experience, that sentiment.
Yeah, I've said multiple times, probably in the last 3 years since I officially retired from practicing.
that's a loaded word, retired, right?
Yeah, retired. Yes, I think I'm working more now. But in the different roles that I've had now, and now being with LMU, when I talk with veterinary students, I kind of joke where I finally know what I want to do when I grow up. And with all the traumas and tribulations that my wife and son and I have gone through over the years, it's really kind of, in the hindsight, there's no way I would have the life I have now, which is a pretty remarkable life. And the house and the location we're at back in Iowa and all the other fun stuff that we have, there's no way we would have gotten here if we hadn't gone through the really significant highs and lows. So it's kind of solidified for me that going through the lows suck. And there's no way to put a silver lining on, it's all gonna work out. No one wants to hear that.
That's right.
But a son of a gun, sometimes bad things happens, and sometimes the good Lord allows bad things happen, or however you want to spin it. But many times we cannot become the person that God created us to be 50, soon to be 53 years ago, in about a month or so, without all the scabs and pains and headaches along the way. And it's easy now to go back and say it was worth it. I wish I would have maintained a better perspective. And that's one of the lectures I give to students is how to maintain a better perspective and learning from my mistakes. But even if I had maintained a better perspective, I wouldn't have the perspective now. I don't know.
That's a good point.
I don't have all the answers, but yeah, it's
one of those things, because like even when I'm talking with folks going through like the book of James, the whole concept of count it all joy when you face trials of many kinds. I always remind folks, I'm like, we're to count it joy. It doesn't mean you have to be happy about it. There's a big difference. And so I've been very unhappy. I think maybe what I'm hearing from you is that there've been some unhappy moments, but through it all, thankfully God is faithful. Well, let's talk, because let's go to some of the, for a lot of veterinary professionals, that really big crisis or real challenge comes in vet school. I mean, for most veterinarians, I don't want to say that life is easy before that, but certainly vet school is one of those challenges that you're in that cauldron, and things get heated up really fast.
Yeah.
So how was that for you? Well, let me ask this first. So did you go into vet school as a Christian, or how did faith help you with that transition?
Right.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in the Lutheran Church in Rockford, Illinois. And typical kid, I think. Kind of liked church because my friends were there. That was about it. Went through confirmation because I was supposed to go through confirmation. I was in the boys choir until I got this voice, and they kind of asked me to no longer contribute. And I went to church, called myself a Christian, but never really had an appreciation for what that meant or what my faith was. In hindsight, it probably was not a very good faith. There was always well, if I do this, I'll get that. Or, oh, hey, Lord, having problems getting into vet school, because I was not the photographic memory type. I was the one that studied and studied and studied, and I got that solid C plus.
Yes.
But I was in Iowa State for 10 years because of that. But I specifically remembered kind of a moment looking back of how inappropriate my faith was when the second time I did not get into vet school. I got the lovely rejection. Thank you for applying, but no. And I had, I can't remember what it was, but I remember making a concerted effort that, okay, I need to do this and this and this that might make God happy with me.
Right.
So next time I get in, not having anything to do of maybe studying a little bit more or other changing my relationship with the Lord, but maybe if I do certain things, He won't stop me from getting in. That was my mindset, and so I was still very much of having to do it by myself. I was in control. There was no trusting God. And I think if I did think He was involved, He was stopping me. That was my mindset. Right. Because it couldn't be my fault. Right. I wasn't getting in. It was God's fault. Right. And so, to say the least, wasn't in the right perspective. So then when I got into school, let alone got into vet school, I think the good Lord, I had met my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, Jenny Marino, now Jenny Bieck. And I would have not gotten through vet school if it wasn't for her. She, still to this day, she's been my rock. And I won't talk much more about that because I'll start crying. So move on. I'm with you. Move on from there. But vet school, oddly enough, the analogy I used when people talk to me about how that first semester was, when I go around to the vet schools and do lectures and stuff like that, everyone says the same thing. It was like drinking from a fire hose. Yeah. Just volume of information was just crazy. And the time management was hard enough. Right. That I didn't even know CVF existed. Right. At Iowa State, where I went to vet school, there was a CVF. I had no idea. I didn't go to church.
Mm.
That part of my life was there. I called myself a Christian, but now in hindsight, it was more of a Christmas Sunday or Easter
Mm.
Sunday Christian.
Right.
And I prayed before the exams.
Of course.
But otherwise, I didn't pray. And so, unfortunately, I didn't have that foundation that I do now. And I think things may have been a little bit easier. I know they would have been easier on me if I would have had a little bit more rock to build off. Yeah.
Well, and even what we started this conversation about, talking about how it's through some of those challenges that really the steel of our faith is forged.
Yeah.
It's hard looking back, because I think we've all been through that transactional phase of faith. And it is really easy. You do kind of blank, that God, in big terms, God exists. And, know, in big terms, that he's loving and kind and good. But then there's this disconnect, because what is loving, kind, and good is for God to do what I want when I want it. And so how do I get that? What do I have to do in order for that real quote unquote goodness to come pouring through?
Bargaining chips.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 2 for you, 1 for me, whatever I need to do, God. And that's hard, because, even you mentioned the challenge of getting into vet school. And there's a lot of folks that have experienced that. And it's, it shakes you, for a lot of folks that are in this profession. They're very, we're very driven. We're very task oriented. We're very success oriented, and to face that kind of rejection, or what we would call failure. And even we maybe need to probably find a different word, because what we call failure is just God's timing, really, because there comes a point where we're in the right place at the right time for God to do what he needs to do with us. And that, even the point of meeting your wife, you think about, if that had, depending on where you were and if things had gone according to your plan. I had a friend once tell me, actually he did this, a friend graduated from seminary, his first sermon, he got up and he said, I want everyone to know that I did not marry the woman of my dreams. And I'm sitting next to his wife in the pew, and I was like, wow, this is really awkward. And then he said something that rocked me and really made me think. He's like, I married the woman of God's dreams, because God dreams bigger for me. And I was like, oh, that was smooth. That was smooth. I'm like, man, I got to use that sometime. But but yeah, I appreciate that transition in faith. And even for kids, you probably will, interact with students that may not pass their national boards the first time. And how do you navigate that as a person of faith? That can be, how do you even talk to students that are struggling in that way?
Well, fortunately, I didn't pass the CCT the first time.
Oh, well, see, look, you got experience. That's a good.
Oh, yes. The good Lord always say, be careful what you ask for. When you ask for, Lord, give me patience. He's just not going to give it to you. He's going to give you challenges to learn to have patience. So when I do talk to students that haven't passed the national or the NAVLE now, back then with the NBE and the CCT, we had 2-day long tests.
Did you have the invisible ink color booklet? Yes.
The True Magic and Marcer.
That's right. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
Actually, I passed that one with flying colors as the NBE, because I couldn't remember the size of the ostrich egg. Which was interesting enough. So when I do talk to soon to be new grads that haven't passed the NAVLE the first time, it's going to be okay, and whatever the reasons it's going to be in there, we got to figure out what do you need to do differently. Maybe there's some test anxiety or whatever it is.
Mm.
But a lot of it just simply comes down to kind of reinforce, in 5 years, it's not going to matter.
Right.
No one's going to go,
Right.
oh, you're my doctor. Did you pass the NAVLE the first time?
Right.
Don't ask your GPA. And I tell students
Right.
all the time, what do you call a vet student that graduates with a C minus? Doctor.
Doctor. Yeah.
And if we could get these students to stop trying to get straight A's in vet school and spend more time with friends, or ideally in church or devotion, or with your spouse or your kid. It's amazing how many have kids in vet school now.
Oh, yeah.
Which never happened when I was in vet school. I think if people could learn to decompress in vet school, we would have an easier time decompressing as a practicing veterinarian.
Right.
So I try to kind of tie in the whole NAVLE thing with that, it's going to work out. If you got to take it 3 bloody times, you take it 3 bloody times. Fine. It's okay. It will happen.
Right.
I don't know what the percentage is for people that go through vet school and never, ever, ever, ever get their license. Is like almost non-existent.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's going to happen. You just got to be patient with and find the practices that can be willing to work with you. But if they're from a Christian standpoint, maybe it's a scenario like for me that, the Lord didn't want me to pass the first time. So I can have that empathy and compassion for students, years, decades on down the line, to say, you know what, I truly understand where you're coming from.
Well, and there's this weight, because again, excuse me, there's this weight that we as a profession, I fall into this group. I'm a workaholic. I'm a perfectionist. And the thing that humbles you the most is those imperfections and those things that we think that we are so task oriented as a profession that if we can't check off all the boxes, it's not just this idea of failure. It starts to weigh heavily on your shoulders and in your mind and in your heart. And that's the thing where, going to Philippians, that peace of God that protects our heart and mind in Christ Jesus, the idea that emotionally and mentally that we can be in this act of balancing and coming to terms with everything is not, we're not the sum total of all the things that we do, right? That there's more to us as individuals and within our profession. I think that's part of the reason why, when you and I went to vet school, it was just understood that most marriages were going to end in divorce, that depression was just going to be a thing, burnout, the first well, this will be next, because the next big transition is that first job, right? That first job hit me like a Mack truck, and I was like, wait, I'm working 90 hours a week for what again? And how did you navigate? So from navigating through the entrance and exit process of vet school, how did that prepare you for your first job? Because Kansas State did a good job of preparing me from a medical standpoint, but I think from an emotional mental health standpoint, the profession still at that point in time in the late 90s was still, and kind of the expectation was that we were going to be unhealthy and you just had to learn to deal with it. How did you navigate that? Or
initially not very well.
Oh, okay. Well then, congratulations.
So my first practice, we ended up moving down to the Charleston, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach.
Oh, nice.
Area. My first practice, the mentorship was pretty horrible. I chose poorly. But because of that, kind of a little baptism by fire, it allowed me to kind of run through the rust, or actually it wouldn't be rust, There was no, the squeak wheel getting greased. There was no, there's no, no grease at all. I mean, it was just, I remember graduating from Iowa State. I love Iowa State, but Mother Goose, that first case of diarrhea, I'm talking about doing fecal cultures.
Right. Yep.
Because I learned, referral medicine stuff at the university. Right. I didn't learn GP in very colorful language. My mentor was like, what
what are you doing?
Give it some metronidazole, get it out the door, and go to the next appointment. And I'm like,
exactly. Oh, we can do that?
I can do that? That's what you're supposed to do.
That's right.
So it was about 6 months of learning GP.
Right.
And then I don't think even found a church. Didn't even know where church was at. It was me, my dog, a TV tray, small, big, giant, tube TV,
yes,
a boogie board in the beach. And learning how to go, ride the waves and go to walking with my dog. And I was getting married in October. My wife soon to be wife wasn't with me. Went into clinical depression. It was just, I'm like, I spent 10 years to work this much and be treated this way. Wow, this is not cool.
Right.
And then soon after we got married, one of my first conversations with my lovely new bride was, hey, by the way, I need to find a new job and we need to move.
That's right. That's almost, it's interesting because I met my wife while I was at my first, in my first practice. And we were set up on a blind date. And I had just come back from Indiana. I had been looking for a new job. And I really wasn't interested in going out on a blind date because I knew that I needed to get the heck away because it was just, it was too much. And in all fairness, there were certainly, and I'm sure that there were certainly some wonderful mentor focused, well adjusted veterinarians that were out there. But the preponderance of what we were faced with, this was back when it was expected. And even what we did in vet school kind of reinforced this, like you were pushed to the very limit every single day. And to some degree, I kind of went into veterinary medicine with that James Herriot fog, thinking that I was going to go into mixed animal practice and I'd be able to take long strolls through the mountains and I'd be able to sit and have a cup of tea and I would, all of these things. But for me, it was just that continual pressure and that first practice I was in, I learned so much as a veterinarian. But I also, and even looking back, I have some sympathy because there was a lot of veterinarians in that generation before ours that pushed for decades after decade. And so when you get a new practitioner, so by any chance, did your new boss, did he go on an extended vacation within the first 6 months when you were there? Or was I the only one? Was I the only one that inherited a practice?
No, he didn't. But not to, say too many things. Yeah. There was some new construction going on, and soon after I graduated, bouts of time where he would leave,
right,
and I needed help. Specifically with a splenectomy.
Oh, yep.
Soon
mine was a GDV. GDV. So keep going.
And I watched cut one vessel on the spleen and then took off. And I'm like, I peed a little bit. Honestly, right. I did. Oh my God, I barely know how to do a spay.
Yep.
But yeah, it was. But you know what? because of what I learned at Iowa State, because of the things we got to do there versus what the students can do now, I was able to do it.
Right.
Took a while. I took a lot of anxiety, but I got it done. And I just kind of had to do the whole suck it up buttercup type thing. And I do think our generation and beyond us, it makes it more difficult when we have some of the younger generations that are in their 30s and the 20s, and to be honest, even in their 40s, that don't want to do that. And don't want to have to go through that heavy lifting that we did. And they go, hey, we had to do it. You have to do it. But you know what? When I look back to some of the older vets that I've met and over the years, when I was young and now when I'm older, how many older vets, male or female, do you think of and you can go, oh, they were just happy? No. They were just angry, bitter. And I'm like, because they were burned out for 20 years and we just didn't even have a name for it. We didn't even call it burned out. So finally, the younger generations are learning that, dude, I don't want to go what you went through. And I know what you had sucked, but that doesn't mean I have to do it. And I'll tell the students, I'm like, the vets you may work with, they may not want to hear it. But our burden is not yours to carry. It's just not. So finally, we are having this conversation of mental health. And the biggest thing I really focus on with these students is, Mother Goose, guys, you got to figure out how you can decompress now. As a student. What it is that you can do, or new grad for that matter, what you can do to realize, like, when for me, it's working out, going for a run. I do a lot of obstacle course racing, like the Tough Mudders, Spartans, and stuff like that. Love doing that. Love working out. But when I've finally owned my own practice, I never did, because I didn't make it a priority. And that led to the burnout, because our priorities were all messed up. But way back when I was dealing with the difficulty, and I went to my second practice in Charleston, where I was there for 12 years, and we grew it to a 4-doctor practice when it basically was just me. Growing to a 4-doctor practice in about 6 years. Had some great relationships, good mentorship. But I wouldn't have been able to grow that practice if I hadn't gone through the hell of the 6 month of the first practice. But I had my wife, my dog, the beach, the town, my friends. I had my priorities straight. I knew how to decompress without knowing that I was decompressing. And to kind of go fairly quick, I know we're getting fairly close on time.
I want to say, actually, hold on to that thought, because we're about out of time here, and I want to start with that, because this transition, as we've been talking, this transition and the way that faith begins to grow in that crucible is a very interesting thing. So I want to make sure we give it plenty of time. So would you mind if we picked up with that story the next time? So next week, let's continue this conversation about how that progression of faith began in earnest in your life at that point in time, and how it's developed since then. And hopefully, as folks are listening, they're hopefully folks that can connect to this story and understand that that God is present even in the difficult circumstances, even when things aren't going exactly the way we have planned, and through it all, if we continue to look to Him, we will see His good hand at work, and together we will learn how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing. Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing,
a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you are blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, you can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.